Hi, my name is Görgen Nilsson. I'm one of two founders in ScandiDos, and I'm also the CEO of the company. Today I'm going to talk about our 4D patient dosimetry during advanced radiotherapy and the QA from first fraction to from prescription to final fraction, I should say. So today, if you know ScandiDos, and you probably know our Delta4 system, we've been working quite intensively with the Delta4 PT system, pre-treatment system, and I will give you some brief information on the status of the company. Until last year, 2015, we had more than 500 Delta4 PT installed in more than 40 countries. In the US, we had a lot of proven clinical experience with partners that we've been working with. If we look backwards, already 2006, we introduced the first Delta4 pre-treatment system, at that time for IMRT. Later on, we worked quite close with both Varian and Elekta on validating the VMAT and Rapid Arc technology. So we did factory testing together with them. And if you remember, they both released their products for VMAT and Rapid Arc in 2008. The years after that, we worked intensively in developing the software further, doing machine QA. We have the HexaMotion, which is a 6D motion platform for tumor tracking and gating. And the HexaMotion is a complementary system to the Delta4 system. Since several years now, 6 years, we have had the possibility to also visualize the measured dose in patient anatomy to make the analysis clinical relevant. Why are we using two crossing 2D arrays in the Delta4 system? And why did we spend the effort to actually patent that? Well, it's a complete verification of intensity modulated dose. The detectors is covering the cross-section of each beam in all directions, as you see here on the graph. It gives you a sub-millimeter check of the dose position accuracy and the gradient check along the edge of the tumor slash target in X, Y, and Z. So when you place the isocenter in the central part on the axis of the cylinder, you will get the gradients in a very high dense region of the arrays. It's actually also the optimum way of using a fixed number of detectors, and a fixed number of detectors is also a cost, because the cost is very much related to the number of detectors in such a system. And if you can use them as efficient as possible, you get a better value for your money. Another thing that is often forgot about is when you perform your gamma index check is that you really need a good statistics. You need many measuring points to provide you a good statistics. And in the Delta4 system, you easily have hundreds of detectors creating your gamma index. The Delta4 system brings you many good things in the software, and it's known to have a very strong software. One thing that you get is the instant pass and fail analysis. Immediately, instantly after you perform your measurement, you get the knowledge on if it's a pass or fail on that specific patient plan. You do get analysis of real measure data, no additional processing, and then you get your green light. The Delta4 anatomy, you get the gamma as a as a complementary information to the gamma analysis based on real measurement in the detector planes. You get the dose volume histogram-based analysis using 3D data in the phantom, and the 3D data is then visualized in the patient anatomy, as mentioned before. So it's a very strong way as a complementary tool to the measured data. Another very important part of when doing pre-treatment verification is to find the cause of deviations. When you do have a deviation once in a while, then you need a very strong toolbox to find out what's going on. Otherwise, you will not learn anything from the discrepancies, and you will probably go and do exactly the same mistake once again. So it's extremely important to be able to find the cause of deviation. And in the Delta4 system, we measuring the dose distribution per pulse, each dose pulse individually with very, very high accuracy. So the complete electronics is made to measure the dose per pulse, and thereby the accuracy is better than 1% in dose detection per pulse. And this gives you a possibility to look into the detailed data and find the cause of the discrepancy. A few years ago, we made a survey in US, and we found out that customers, when they looked upon the Delta4 compared to other cylindrical phantoms or 2D arrays and EPID, they found that the Delta4 was the green here. It was faster to measure the dose. And the red part, it was also faster to doing the analysis. But customer didn't like the way we provided for setting up the system. It took too long time to set up the system. That's the feedback we got from customers. So what we decided was to fade out the Delta4 PT and fade in the Delta4 Phantom Plus. It's a complete new design, but built on the same concept as the Delta4 PT. Now you can see that the blue part is very, very short, and it's nearly instantly to set up the system. It's just to align it and then to go. So it's very quick. And the reason is that the Delta4 Phantom Plus is wireless. It's wireless in the way that it's working with Wi-Fi. So it's wireless communication of data, but it's also runs on battery. So you don't have to hook up any cables to the system. It also has an improved long-term stability. And the nice thing with that is that you actually only have to calibrate the system once when it's new. And then you don't really have to update the calibration. In some countries, there are legislations that says that you have to do calibration. And thereby, we also have put in the possibility to put in an ion chamber in one of the quarters of the Phantom. But otherwise, you don't really have to do it. The nice thing with this is that it becomes very fast and easy to perform the pre-treatment verification. And well, we sold the Delta4 Phantom Plus since the summer 2015 or the end of the summer, and now in May 2016 we have soon 100 clinics using Phantom Plus. Together with the Delta4 Discover, it also creates an optimum workflow to minimize efforts. Now I will come back to that. So now we're looking into online or at-treatment verification or in vivo dosimetry. There's a lot of different names on it, but it's all the same. The patient dosimetry is to perform measurements during the treatment delivery. Today, patient dosimetry is currently very limited. And we asked the physicists around in the world what the outstanding challenges are. And we found that most physicists really would like to perform QA at each fraction. And also that they wanted to replace the pre-treatment verification with in vivo dosimetry to simplify the work. And another thing that we were told was that now when hyperfractionation is being used more frequently by our customers, it requires patient dosimetry at all fractions. Because if you're delivering the treatment in very few fractions, each fraction becomes even more important, that is 100% correct, and then you really would like to perform QA on it. As adaptive radiotherapy becomes more prevalent, it requires high quality patient dosimetry. You know that adaptive radiotherapy is really around the corner, and if we want to perform it in the way it should be, we should take care of the patient positioning, the organ positioning, but also the dose delivered to the patient. So now here is a video on the Delta4 Discover. The Delta4 Discover has two ways of measuring the dose distribution. It has the direct way, and it has the 4D dose verification way. The direct way is a faster way of doing it, and the 4D dose verification is the outstanding quality way of doing it. The direct way includes MLC verification. So the MLC, the leaf positioning per control point is verified. And they are verified with a very good accuracy, better than 0.5 millimeter per control point. So that's extremely good. And it's completely synchronized with the delivery of the treatment. And this is, of course, extremely important that we have a synchronization with the delivery. Because if you don't have the synchronization, you don't have anything to compare with. And therefore, it's extremely important to have this information as well. We're also verifying the rotation completely independently, not just reading the log file from the treatment machine, but actually verifying both the gantry angle and the collimator angle rotation. And this is also synchronized with the delivery scheme. The accuracy is very good. It's better than 0.5 degree. Finally, on the direct way, we have the monitor unit verification. Per control point, we're verifying the monitor unit delivery. And also that is synchronized with the delivery scheme. And it's very good accuracy on it. If we want to go further than doing just the direct way for verification, we can do the 4D verification. The 4D verification requires a patient-specific calibration, and the Delta4 Discover system is then calibrated towards the pre-treatment verification system, so the Delta4 PT or the Delta4 Phantom Plus. When you've been doing that, you can measure at each fraction and get the 4D dose distribution, 3D dose distribution plus time resolution. The calibration can be retrospectively applied to the data you obtained with the direct way. So if you've done the direct way for a number of fractions, you can, when you calibrate your device, you can get the 4D dose data for also the fractions prior to the calibration. The accuracy is outstanding. It's better than 99%, so it's really, really good. The data can now also be calculated together with CT or cone beam CT data to give you the dose distribution in anatomy. And that will be then per fraction, but you will also be able to look at subfraction if you want to, or accumulated for all fractions. So you have all possibilities combining the dose data. And of course, if you're going to look at accumulated dose, you have to look at least 3D dose distribution. It's not good enough to use the direct way, but the direct way is good enough in many cases. If we look upon how you're working today in the clinic, most likely, is that when you're going to treat a number of patients with advanced radiotherapy, you probably make treatment plans several days a week. In many clinics, they do it almost every day. They perform the treatment planning. And then, of course, you need to do the pre-treatment verification, same day or maybe the next day. And that means that you almost have to perform pre-treatment verification every day. And that's, of course, some work to book up the machine and make sure you have all equipment and so on, and perform your measurements. After that, you can start the treatment the same day or the next day. So thereby you have starts of treatment almost every day of the week. But what if you could do it this way, that you could perform all your pre-treatment verification at the same time for all the patients that's starting the same week or during a couple of weeks? Then you would be so much more efficient. And if you could combine it with a MQA, the weekly machine QA, then you would be even more efficient. Well, of course, then you don't have any check of the correctness when you start the treatment, like in the patient 1 example here. Well, then you should use the IVD direct, as I call it here, the direct way of using the Delta4 Discover. So you could use the direct way for a couple of days, and then when you've been running your pre-treatment verification and calibration of the Delta4 Discover, then you will get the 3D and 4D dose. So to conclude this, the logistics for the pre-treatment verification, once per week rather than per patient. So this is a big simplification, and you will save a lot of time. If you do the pre-treatment verification at the same time as weekly QA, you will save even more time. And still very high level QA at almost no effort. So you get the best of two worlds, the efficiency and the accuracy. Well, there is also an alternative, and that is that the 3D dose verification is performed only when a certain action level is, in the direct way, is exceeded. So you know that many times when you run a pre-treatment verification on a patient, it's a pass directly. And if you would run the direct way and you'll set your action level in a decent way, then you will see that most of the patient will not require a pre-treatment verification, a calibration at all. So then you can skip that step, maybe. It's up to you to decide. In that case, very few treatments will need pre-treatment verification. Full capability to make 3D and 4D analysis when required. So, for example, if you've been treating a patient for a couple of weeks and then suddenly you have a discrepancy which exceeds your tolerances or action levels, then you perform your pre-treatment verification and you calibrate the Delta4 Discover. The Delta4 Discover will then retrospectively let you use this calibration for all the fractions you've previously been giving the patient. And thereby you can also look at the accumulated 3D dose for the whole treatment scheme for this patient. So that's pretty nice, and being able to see that you are not too far away from where you actually plan to be on this patient. If we look at the user interface, in principle, the Delta4 Discover doesn't require any interactions at all when you're delivering the treatment. It has a handshaking with the record and verify system. It knows what the patient is going to be treated, so it's loaded into the software. And when you start the treatment, it automatically starts measuring. When you look at the screen, you will be able to see all the parameters that has been measured: dose volume histogram, multi-leaf collimator motion pattern, patient positioning, gantry angle, collimator angle, etc. So if all these are green, then you get the green status and you get a pass. If one of them are red, then it would be easy to just push the button, for example, the first one, and then you can look at the gamma index, the distance to agreement, and dose deviation. Or for clinical relevant data, the dose volume histograms. If you've only been running the direct mode, then you can look at the 4 parameters for the direct mode. It's also possible to look at the trends from fraction to fraction, from treatment session to treatment session for the patient. If we look into the device, the Delta4 Discover, it has a lifetime that exceeds 10 years. It doesn't provide any reduction in clearance. It's very thin. The profile of the detector is very thin, so it goes in between the laser guard and the treatment head. So it doesn't take away any of the clearance of the treatment, which is extremely important. The attenuation is very small. It's only some carbon fiber and some printed circuit boards that attenuates less than 1% at the 6 MV beam, and it doesn't reshape your profiles or depth doses. No recommissioning is necessary. It's very simple to just put in a small correction for the attenuation. Another thing that is extremely important is that it doesn't increase the skin dose. It's less than 1% at the 10 by 10 field and the 6 MV at 6 MV. It increases a bit with bigger field sizes. That's extremely important, that it doesn't increase the skin dose too much, because the skin dose is of course something that can prevent you from delivering the treatment the way you want to deliver it. It also has a robust and easy way of attaching the device. We're using the same way to attach this device as Varian or Elekta is using to attach their accessory holders. So it's very, very robust. It also has the capability to slide out and be able to look at the light field, which is quite nice. And you can also look at the distance scale, both when the device is slided out and when it's in position. It's completely wireless. It runs on battery and Wi-Fi. And the weight is very low. It's only 9 kilogram without battery, and 2 kilogram with battery. No kilograms today. The array itself is 20 by 25 cm, projected to isocenter. Pitched isocenter is 2.5 millimeter long and 5 millimeter across the leaves, and this is for a 5 millimeter leaf collimator. Thereby it has 4040 parallel channels, and it's a semiconductor detector that is used. It's a P-type silicon detector, which is completely outstanding on the market in performance. The detector size is small. It's less, or it's exactly 1 millimeter diameter, and the stability is very, very good. It's less than 1% per 25 kilogram sensitivity decrease, and that means if you calibrate it in the beginning of a session for a patient, and the treatment is going on for 6 weeks, and all patients are at the clinic are measured when they are treated, then the sensitivity change is less than 0.4% still. So it's extremely long-term stable. The measurement accuracy in VMAT is very, very good. The reproducibility is better than 99.7%. The error finding is better than 99%. For example, if you look at monitor unit change, that's almost 100% accuracy on finding that. If you look at the MLC movement, it's better than 0.5 millimeter. And when we introduce errors into the delivery regime, we will find with the gamma index 1.5%, 1.5 millimeter, we have better than 99% of a gamma index. So it's extremely good in finding errors, and that's exactly what we want to do. Included in the device is also patient positioning verification. It's a laser that measuring the distance to the skin of the patient, pointing on the isocenter of the gantry. So it measured the distance per control point, comparing it with the calculated distance from using the CT contours from the treatment planning system, and then of course gantry angle, collimator angle, etc. The accuracy depends on how good accuracy we have from the CT data. So depending on the CT data slices thickness. But normally it's better than 1 millimeter, so it's very, very good. And with the laser, then we know that the patient is on the couch. We know that the patient is in the right position, and we actually know that it's the right patient as well, because not two persons looks the same way. Finally, I'm going to mention some about the first step in the QA process. That's the planning. So later this year, 2016, we will release the Delta4 TPV, treatment planning verification. The idea with this software, which is plain software, is to verify the treatment planning system and if the treatment planning system has correctly calculated the dose distribution. So the questions it will answer is target covered? Dose to the organs at risk acceptable, and dose calculation correct. It gives you data similar to the measure data, those 3D views. You get the dose difference, the distance to agreement, the gamma index, and you can also overlay the CT and structures and isodoses. And finally, look at the dose volume histograms to verify the clinical relevance of and the correctness of the treatment plan. Similar to what you do on measurements, you can also look at profiles. So you will, if you're familiar with Delta4 software, you will feel very familiar to use this software for verifying also the treatment planning system correctness. It also has the tables here with the tabulated parameters comparing treatment planning system and the treatment planning verification with a number of objectives. And you can set up the criteria due to a standard, or you can define your own criteria if you want to. So the advantage for having the treatment planning verification in the Delta4 system is, of course, first of all, independent dose calculation in the patient, but it's also that it's really nice that it's integrated with the Delta4 system. And it brings you the same workflow and tools as for measurements. And calculation and measurements are directly comparable. So, for example, if you want to, if you have a discrepancy, for example, when you do your pre-treatment verification on the total dose delivery, you could look at subarcs, and then you could compare the subarc dose that you measured with the subarc dose that was calculated. Normally, you don't have this information from treatment planning system. So, but that's something you get when you have our treatment planning verification. You only do the import of data from treatment planning system once, and that's actually saving a lot of time on having to do it only once and in one way. We know that there is a lot of complaint from customers that they feel that it's cumbersome with the treatment planning systems to import the data from it, and there's nothing we can do about else than just make sure that you do it only once. All the QA data in one database, which is also nice, only one database to maintain. And as I already mentioned, potential to enhance the analysis. So the treatment planning verification to Phantom Plus, you can also look upon data from when treating the patient and data you got from the Discover to compare it with treatment planning verification data. So that's really brings you really strong tools to find out what's going wrong if something goes wrong. So confidence from prescription to last fraction is what it's all about. Thank you.